Here we go.
That's the
I couldn't get on.
And you try to, ramping people up for vaccinations. And you go to work.
Like yesterday.
2 weeks ago, but we got
I should be immune for
I think so too, but I'm seeing more and more people in the
It was
store.
ready to
I'm
take
seeing
together,
more and
we
more
didn't
people
get it
wear
till
masks.
recently.
Well, I started up again, but I was
Okay.
without fiber.
Shall we ready?
Give it one moment. Yeah, everything's good there.
Parks and Recreation Department.
I think
master
they're just
plan,
trying to get his name down.
Planning Department.
we can start.
comprehensive update, City Commission, CIC.
We've had a
Oh,
couple.
Emily's here.
We've had some tech issues
Bob's
today.
leading that conversation.
What's a day without a few tech issues?
It's okay. At least my
saying the meeting
computer
was
screen
wrong.
didn't go black this time.
I'm going, wait a minute.
I'm texting Christina, telling her silly stuff. I want to see.
So you went by Denise a little bit, right?
Yeah, Denise lives on Third and Madison. We're on
Free public to
We're-
sign up on.
just around the corner.
A little bit. That,
Like we're up like the,
the hill's
I bet
nice
it
in
will
there,
be
like
like-
it's like its own little road.
yeah, like we're, this is where everything happened. And then there's a little house here.
Oh, my
goodness.
Or a house for sale, they're not gonna be able to.
Roger. Who's Roger taking place of?
Seems to be talking.
I think he's just going to do citizens' comment tonight, but he is going to leave the place of,
But it's like there's just always on the field
Dee Dee,
on
when she, when Dee Dee
that
goes
make
to
it
Dee Dee
hard.
goes.
To be conducting the meeting.
Like the gal who lived there.
Okay. She just put his name down.
Wonderful, wonderful things.
I know.
We can't hear anything.
Bob's trying to run the meeting, but we can't hear him.
Seems to be talking, but we can't
Guess we
hear
gotta
him.
go to his house.
Yeah, I believe so. Can he hear me?
I don't know. And
Through
public
this?
property taxes, which is compounding and.
Hi, Bob. This is Emma. Can you hear me?
No.
Okay. It seems that we cannot hear you. I just want to make sure that nothing is muted on your end.
Oh, shit.
Seems another person, William's text box is lighted up and we can't hear him either.
Shall
So,
we, they're still outside, shall we wait for them to come inside?
no, I think that's okay. I think the audio issue is
Okay, we'll start the meeting and
pressing
get that
matter.
resolved. Okay.
Yes.
It's August 7th, 2023. We call the CIC meeting to order. And we'll wait see if Bob LaSalle gets sound, if we can hear him. Can you hear us, Bob? I don't think Bob can hear us yet.
He can't hear us either.
Okay.
Should I make a sign on make sure it's
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to, I believe that the tech guy is trying to figure out if it's something on our end or if it is something on possible Bob's
Going,
end.
Bob.
It seems like there's multiple people who are talking and
Hey, Bob, you're not
nine.
coming through for some
Is
reason.
there a chat that we can ask him when these? We don't see the symbol. He's not muted, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We've We're working on it, Bob.
Yeah, we're trying to find what's going on over here.
Yeah, I can
It's a
see,
technical
yeah,
issue.
that
Yes.
Famous last words.
Well, his mic is on. I can see it pulsating.
Hold up the meeting.
Okay.
Yay!
Thank you. We can hear you now. Yay.
Yeah, okay, looks like Dennis is not there.
Oh, he's here.
Dennis is here.
Oh, okay, Dennis, would you call the roll, please?
Okay, August 7th. Kanema, Linda's here.
Here?
I'm here. Caulfield, Dan, here. Elyville, Carla,
Here.
Dee Dee.
Here.
Gaffney Lane, no rep. Hazel Grove, no rep. Hillendale, Joss is not here. Sarah's here.
Sarah's here.
McLaughlin, Denise,
Is not here, she's at the M&A meeting that's happening tonight as
and
well.
Will is here,
I'm
yes. Park Place, Steve. Here. And Bob is zooming. Rivercrest, we have Emily out there. Okay, great. Good. We have Jordan, we have Roger, and we have Dan Scott. Dan Scott's on Zap.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Josh Kaiser from Hillendale notified me that he would not be able to make tonight's meeting, so he is an
He's in the
excused
West.
absence. Okay, let's see here. We made a change on the presentation. Oh, excuse me. Just got missed. Public comment is next. And Emma, I'm going to have you go ahead, since I can't see in the room there. Go ahead and call for comments if there are any.
Okay, are there any public comments?
Isn't Roger here for a public comment?
I answered his question. He had emailed me earlier. He just hadn't seen my response.
Okay.
Okay, I do not believe there are any public comments.
Okay, and we'll go on to our presentations. We made a slight change here. The Parks and Recreation Department master plan will be presented first, so go ahead with Parks.
Good evening. My name is Kendall Reid. I'm the Parks and Recreation Director for Oregon City. And tonight we're here to give you an update on the process regarding the Parks Master Plan. We kicked off our Parks Master Plan back in April of 2022. We've had quite a robust public engagement process, completing stakeholder interviews with city commissioners, committee members, leaders within the community. We've completed online surveys, also statistically valid surveys that were mailed out. We've done over 3 public engagement meetings, and tonight we have Nilay Bhatt from Next Practice Partners here to provide you an update on the findings and the recommendations. Nilay?
Thank you, Kendall. If I may share my screen, please. Can you all see it? All right. Kendall asked me to keep this short, so I promise I'll be done in about 2 to 3 hours. I'm just kidding. As you said, my name is Nilay Bhatt. I'm the founder and CEO at Next Practice Partners. And as part of this process, I want to bring you all quickly up to speed in about 10 minutes or so, what we've done in the last 14 or 15 months. As any master plan goes in general, we have these 3 big steps, right? Where are we today? Where do we want to go, and how will we get there? The initial, where are you today, is a lot of that came from the assessments we conducted. You all, your community members, the elected officials, the staff, all of those helped us identify a better sense of where you want Oregon City to be. And then ultimately, in working with Kendall and his team, and then sharing that back with the council, with the community, we have a draft roadmap as well in terms of how the future will be addressed. So the most critical piece is obviously the community engagement process. And as Kendall said, this was fairly extensive over a period of several months, in person, online, multilingual, web, app, and so on. We had over 700 participants with orcityparksandplay.org, an ADA accessible and multilingual website. We've had 4 community meetings, over 16 focus group and key leader interviews, over 400 statistically valid survey respondents, and in addition to that, almost 200 online survey respondents as well. The website is still on, so at any point in time, anybody that wanted to share feedback has been given the opportunity to do so. In addition to that, some of the assessment work we did as well, looked at the core program areas. Kendall and his team identified what those would be, and staff went through a pretty detailed process looking at everything from aquatics to fitness, events, culture, enrichment, socialization, and so on, just to get a better sense of what the programmatic needs are and how will these needs serve your space or your facility needs for the future. As a part of this, we also tracked and inventoried all the amenities, the park acreages by different service providers across the city. And the intent was to really get a sense of what the resident in Oregon City has access to. What it doesn't talk about is equity of access or distribution. So we also built additional equity maps for every single park and amenity type that shows from a service area standpoint, where are there gaps and overlaps in your system. So a couple of examples. These are playgrounds, what you see in green, that's the city. What you see in that darker shade of brown, that's other service providers, in this case, the schools. And so you can see with respect to playgrounds, there's significant overlaps, even though we recognize that when it comes to the school sites, access is not the same as it is with a city-owned and operated site, right? So those service areas have also been adjusted for accordingly. But you can see, for example, playgrounds versus pickleball courts, right? And there are gaps in service areas, so it becomes a whole lot easier for leadership, for you all, as you think of this for the future, to determine what might be the greatest good for the greatest number of people, and thus, where can you invest your dollars in the future? Again, what this doesn't say, though, is conditions, right? I can look at the aquatics maps, and it shows me you have a pool, but having been there, and you all know it, it's well past its life cycle, and it's at its capacity and then some. So that's where the priority investment rating comes into picture. And this is where the statistically valid survey results that were random, that were anonymous, that were mailed to your residents citywide, people were asked what their needs are for each and every amenity type and program type. If they said yes, they have a need, then the follow-up was, well, to what extent is your need being met? Is it completely met 100%? Is it completely unmet at 0% or somewhere in between? For the same facility amenities, they were then asked, is this important to you? And the combination of those two is really important, because I can tell you that in Oregon City, cricket is a huge unmet need. But it's important to all of 6 people.
There you go.
And so it's not a true community-wide priority. And so as you're thinking in terms of establishing the priority investment ratings, the key is what is important to a large number of households in your community, and from that, what is still an unmet need. So that is where this list comes into play. No surprises across the country. Every single place we've seen, trails are a really, really high priority. Water access, both in terms of the river access or the pool as well, were certainly high, as was an outdoor amphitheater. You think of the end of the Oregon Trail, and, it's certainly in need of some love, right? And there's some investment that needs to be taken there. Indoor walking, jogging tracks, conservation and open spaces, large community parks, fenced dog parks, and small neighborhood parks were among the very high priorities, followed just below by indoor aquatic centers. Most of your sports fields are, much lower in the priority because, one, there's a smaller group that typically participates in that, and 2, the city's done a better job meeting for those needs than some of the others. Similar line of questioning for programs. And this is where you can see farmers markets have, especially since the pandemic, become really high priorities with this focus on both healthy eating, but as well as simply giving the community a chance to get together. That's why you see special events, you see cultural enrichment programs and events. 3 of your top 4 are essentially opportunities for people to get together and just feel a sense of belonging, right? Feel that they are part of a larger community. The others besides that are adult and senior fitness and wellness. And I generally avoid even calling them seniors. They don't behave like it. It's almost like adults and active adults. But that very much is the focus as well. As you look at Pioneer Center too, and as you look at offerings that the city has, is continuing this need for people that age in place and age actively as well, both from a physical, mental, social, emotional well-being. So with all these priorities in mind, we then worked with the staff to say, okay, great, let's go through a visioning process and see what the core values are. And this is where, Kendall and the team in a day-long process, we arrived at these core values. And these are alphabetically listed: collaborative, engaged, respectful, transparent, and servant leaders. All of these was very much driven by, both Kendall as well as the rest of the staff to say, this is how we want to do what we do going forward. These values then guided the vision for the future. What do we, as a department, want to be known for? Can
One
you still
word
see?
away from queen.
Okay, I'm not going there.
I
Would
think
you find
someone's
out?
probably.
There is.
Can you all hear me still?
Yes.
Yeah, I think William's just unmuted.
Okay, got it. Perfect. So the vision was looking at what do you want to be known for? And that's where the values really came into place here to say, want to be known for being an inclusive, a sustainable, and an impactful agency, right? And sustainability, as we talked through it, came both from a sense of environmental sustainability, but also in terms of fiscal sustainability, right? So that's what, as a department, they looked at the vision for the future, and the mission in terms of why they exist simply came down to 4 words, and it's this, right? And Kendall and the team, as we work through it every day, what you all are volunteering and helping and doing too, is to help influence lives for the better to serve the community. So with these values, the vision, mission in mind, we outline and we share this with the council as well at a high level of what might be the major outcomes from this plan. If you look at a 5 or 10-year horizon from here and you sort of look back and say, great, what is it that we want this plan to help us achieve? These were the major outcomes, starting with earned income opportunities to look at funding. And there's not going to be one single source that's going to address all of these. But these are some of the options, from utility fees to evaluating the potential for a bond or a levy as well. Fees and charges, I know Kendall's already been working on that with cost recovery goals. You've been successful with grants, but there's more to come. We're seeing more and more this opportunity for advertising, sponsorships, and partnerships as well. So all of those, as a combination of a financial sustainability approach, are things we want the department and the city to help look at. Of course, with anything you do, it's going to take staffing as you go forward as well. And, to the team's credit too, they've been really good in terms of already looking at implementing elements of the plan. We've met the team and started talking about the organizational culture change and customer service process, talking in terms of succession planning and what does staffing as a whole look like. In addition to that, from Mountain View from the cemetery to end of the Oregon Trail to your pool to the facilities, you have a lot of great assets, but they are much past the life cycle, and a maintenance approach and a strategy that looks not just at fixing what you have, but also planning for the timeline for equipment replacement, life cycles, etc., is going to be important. And here too, opportunities. Now, one thing we saw from the survey process was that one of the biggest reasons why your community does not participate in what you offer is lack of awareness. They simply don't know what's being offered. And it's hard. I don't think it's entirely because of what the department of the city does or doesn't do. There's also a lot of noise. There's just so much out there. But this is a chance for a strategic marketing and branding opportunity, and frankly, low-hanging fruit for the department to better tell the story, to create greater advocacy, more buy-in, more participation from the community as well. And so that's another piece that we're looking at too, in terms of creating a marketing and branding plan that can help guide the department forward. And then lastly, looking at a couple of these signature spaces with the end of the Oregon Trail, Mountain View Cemetery, for you to look at both a master and a business plan that says, okay, what do we need to invest in this? What will it look like? Who can we partner with? And if we do some of these elements, what additional staffing, maintenance resources do we need for this to work? So these are, again, over a period of 5 to 10 years, the big moves that are outlined as well for staff to look at. And of course, we want your feedback, want to go through this as well. And Kendall has the draft report with him too, so we're waiting based on all these meetings to get the final report and the feedback. Again, from all of you as well to get the feedback, which ultimately will create the final report that needs to be adopted, so staff can really get into implementation, looking at funding sources and even looking at national accreditation, if that's the plan. So with that, I am going to pause and turn it over to you all for questions.
Emma, would you take charge of seeing the people that want to ask questions? I can't see anybody, of course, from here.
Of course. Currently, no one seems to have any questions.
Okay.
I had a follow-up question. Yeah, so I think there was a community engagement meeting, and you had mentioned that the plan was to discuss, have a meeting specifically for discussing like how climate change would impact the suggestions given. And I'm wondering if that meeting has happened and what the takeaway points were from it.
I don't recollect. Kendall, correct me, help me here if I'm wrong, in terms of talking of a specific meeting just for climate change. But I think just in terms of the recommendations, some of the elements where we've seen that having an impact is the need for more shade and shade structures, as more residents are asking for those amenities to simply be able to use the parks or the playgrounds. So we have looked at and recommended both in terms of shade structures as well as tree equity, and that goes beyond just the Parks and Recreation Department. It's something citywide for them to look in terms of, again, providing not just access to a park within a 10-minute walk, but also having access that is shaded within that 10-minute walk. So those are some of the mitigating factors in terms of, especially temperature rise and climate change that we've been recommending through this plan.
You go ask that.
Thank you. Kendall, was there anything else you want to add on to that? If there's other points from the meeting or?
So when it comes to climate change, I know we've had some conversations as a city about a climate action plan. And looking at what we can do as a city to implement some things that will address some of those issues. We are actively looking at how we design our parks to make them more climate friendly and sustainable and resilient. So with all of our parks, that's a lens that we're looking at in regards to climate change. So it's definitely something that's top of mind for us as we move forward, and it's definitely something that we're going to be paying attention to and planning for as we continue to implement things in our Parks Master Plan.
Thanks very much, Kendall.
I believe that Dan Scott had his hand raised. It seems to be lowered, so I'm not quite sure if that question is still there.
Yeah, I'm a new resident. I've moved in within the last year, and I was just curious as to how frequent these surveys will be coming out and how often you're planning to morph this master plan based off of community need.
So the statistically valid survey is typically done once every 5 years, right? That's as a master plan, even though it's a 10-year plan, typically we recommend a 5-year update. And so as a statistically valid survey goes, that's a 5-year process. But listening to the community is a 24/7, 365 role, right? And I saw Commissioner Mal sitting there as well. I know from your standpoint, from Kendall and his team standpoint, from all of you, that's ongoing. So in terms of the community input going forward, Kendall and the team have also launched an app called Happy Feed, where community is able to share feedback on an ongoing basis. The website that we shared at the beginning, that is also accessible. And of course, staff's always there, right? So this plan is not meant to be a set in stone that this is the only way to do it, as much as it's meant to be a living document for you to continue to update as you go along and adapt as things change. So I would say in terms of the plan for input, it's all the time, but in terms of a $15,000 or $20,000 survey, it probably is not something we would recommend you do every year. It's something you probably want to look at every 3 to 5 years.
Great, thank you.
Carla Laws.
So the master plan was presented to the planning commission. So as a planning commissioner, everything was kosher in terms of code. What though I was concerned about, and now I can speak as a resident and as citizen involvement committee representative of my neighborhood, is several things. Is first off, have things developed since it came to the planning commission concerning sustainable plants that will be planted so that there's not replantings necessarily if it floods. Number two, plans with the art and how to keep it staying there in case it floods. And, because when it does flood, there's a lot of rapids and, current moving. Number three would be the horseshoes. Is the Oregon Horseshoe Association came and really wanted to reiterate the history of horseshoes at that park, that since the 1800s that they've had, competitions there where, the family alone who presented, one guy said his family come to Oregon City and spend $500 one time for a horseshoe tournament. So curious about that because that's a big part of Oregon City and our history. And finally, there was one other thing here. What was the other thing I was going to mention? Anyways, those three, if you could answer those, that'd be fantastic.
Sure. I'll be able to answer that because that's the Clackamas Park Master Plan. That's the specific master plan for Clackamas Park. So that's what was brought to the Planning Commission. This Parks Master Plan is the system-wide plan for all of our parks, programs, services. So it's a system-wide plan. So it's not going to get into the specifics of each park.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, what Kendall said.
Okay, thank you.
On the priorities that were high priority, medium priority, and low priority, I saw things like skateboard parks, RVs and stuff. Is that because we already have them? I didn't know if that was.
Yeah.
Didn't want to. All right, that cleared it up because I couldn't imagine that would be the community's rating. But thank you very much. That makes sense.
The caveat to the skate park, though, is we did hear during public engagement, and I have received numerous correspondence from parents asking about an additional skate park. Obviously, we have our skate
Yeah.
park at Clackamas Park. I don't know if many of you are aware, we have a phase 2 development for TSW that calls for an additional skate park that I get a lot of questions about. So I do hear from the community, specifically around the skate park, of wanting an additional one,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, thanks.
I'll go. Will.
Well, thanks. I'm curious about the aquatic center, because we don't really have an aquatic center. We have a pool, which is, I think was built in the year that I was born, 65. So looking at some of those priorities, if we had a newer, more modern building with, some of the things that people now have in pools, where like a lazy river, or so many of those other activities of community engagement, aging in place, like I also swim in Newport. They have a fabulous, there's so many elderly people, I feel like, okay, we're all getting there, exercising every single day, and there's a pickleball court, like there's so many things there at that community, at that center. What's the, are we talking about building something like that for our community? Or is that so far away, or, how do we get that going? Because it's going to take years, and we have.
Yeah, and what I'll say about the pool is it's about 60 years old. Obviously, the leadership there and the staff have done a really good job
No complaints.
of maintaining that facility and keeping it running for that longer period of time. We know it's at the end of life, so we're going to have to make some decisions in regards to maintenance associated with that pool. There are some expensive items that will need to be repaired if we decide that's the route we want to go, to kind of refurbish it or redesign the pool and kind of do a complete overhaul. Or we want to look at other options in regards to another location to try to meet some of these additional needs, and maybe incorporating a pool. That obviously will take a facility and money to be able to accommodate that, and additional funding associated with that. So we're bringing all of this information to the table, to the community, to the city commissioners, and we hope with this information then we can talk about plans in regards to funding, priorities, and what the community and the city commissioners think the next step should be.
Okay. Carla?
The other question I had, now that I think about it, is the community garden. Is that there's a lot of people who have communicated that they want a community garden. Is there any possibilities for that as well?
We do have a community garden at the Pioneer Center. We would love to have more people participate with that community garden. The staff there are primarily the ones who maintain that. And I think on our part, we need to do a better job of raising awareness that that is something that we have.
I thought that was a demonstration garden.
And so as we can get more people involved in being a part of that and working at that community garden. So I think on our part, we just have to do a better job of telling people we do have a community garden.
Are there any other questions? Okay, I don't believe so.
All right, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Kendall and Neely, for your presentations.
Thank you.
Okay, our next presentation is from the Planning Department, a comprehensive update of what's going on, what might be coming up. I, a couple of months ago, asked Aquila Hurd-Ravich, our community development director, to put this together to help fulfill our mission on language
Should work,
issues.
yeah.
And so they're
it doesn't,
going to tell us what's going on, what may be coming up, and a little bit of everything else. So go ahead, Aquila.
All right, thank you. Is that, yeah, you can all hear me okay, right? Okay. So good evening, Aquila Hurd-Ravich. I'm the Community Development Director, and I have Pete Walter here, who's our Planning Manager, and Jim Sayers, who is our Building Official. And so we're gonna talk a little bit about the process and a little bit about kind of how you as neighborhood chairs can stay involved and kind of track things. So it's going to be a pretty high-level overview. I know that Josh Wheeler was here maybe a couple months ago with a Development 101, so it may be a little bit repetitive in some places, but it won't be as detailed as that. But we want to talk about basically how a development idea starts as an idea and then becomes a finished product. And we're gonna go over the planning and the building review piece, and not the engineering piece, which is what Josh does. It's kind of a middle piece there. So we're gonna skip over that to keep it high level anyway. This is the Community Development Department. And on it's my left. I hope it's all your left too. Anyway, you see Pete there. And so those are the planning staff. And we've got Christina, who you know from her previous role as your liaison, and two assistant planners, Jude and Molly. And then on the other side of the chart, we've got Jim and all of our building staff. We have permit techs, and then our plans examiners and our building inspectors. And Kay Newman is fairly new, and she's our administrative assistant and somebody that you'll interact with at the counter, and she's keeping our office running smoothly. Thank you, Kay. Okay, so starts with a project idea. Somebody comes into the counter, they call on the phone, they email us, and they say, I've got this great idea. How do I bring it to life? And so we start by checking the zoning, and some of these things are available to you. They're just on the website. You can look at OC web maps and look through zoning and lots of information on OC web maps. And then we also look at the zoning code and the municipal codes online. And the land use section is in chapter 17. So you can look through it, or you can just call and ask questions because it's a little bit cumbersome. And then we will advise on which process to go through. So a type 1 is essentially over the counter, and those are things that meet the code, that have very little discretion, and it's basically a building permit, or there may be some planning permit, like a street tree removal permit is going to be a type 1 over the counter. And then we've got the other types 2 through the legislative process. Those are the pieces that you'll get notified on, and that you'll get notices in the mail or see the signs posted. Okay, and then I'm going to turn it over to Pete for some of the next few slides, and then Jim will get to talk about a few slides too.
All right, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Step 1 in most applications is called a pre-application conference. It's a requirement for a formal development application. It is not a land use application, and it's not legally binding. And it provides public agencies like the city and the county and the fire district and others to provide meaningful guidance on a tentative application. The pre-application conferences are not open to the public, and no public notice is provided because there's no actual development being proposed. The plans may be conceptual, and the subject might change, the plans may change, and prospective applicant may not even own the land yet, and they're just doing due diligence. So at the pre-app, planning staff gives the applicant written comments, and the engineering staff also gives them written comments about zoning, overlay districts, public utility and engineering concerns and standards, et cetera. And those written comments, as well as the pre-application conference materials provided by the applicant, are public record, and you all can request them through a public records request. So if you're interested in what the pre-applications are either citywide or in your neighborhood, my recommendation would be to set a reminder on your personal calendars to put in a public records request for pre-application conferences every month or so, and we will send you them for free because they're electronic. That's a great way to stay abreast of things. The pre-application conferences are done by virtual meetings. Next is the neighborhood association meeting. So most type 2 or higher applications have to meet with neighborhood association chairs or the entire neighborhood association prior to submitting that application. And the purpose of that meeting, as you well know, is to provide an overview of the proposal and give the neighborhood association an early heads up about the development and get your preliminary feedback and suggestions. And if the neighborhood association is not currently active, the applicant can request a meeting with the CIC. For example, CIC recently had a presentation on subdivision on Lazy Creek Lane for the Gaffney Lane Neighborhood Association. Next, after that, once the pre-application conference and the neighborhood association meetings have been held, they can submit a formal application to planning. And state law sets a deadline under which the applicant and the city must meet in order for the application to be reviewed in a timely manner. And the first stage of that is called a completeness review, where we look at the application and make sure it's got all the pieces and parts it needs to do an adequate review. And once we deem that application complete, there's a 120-day deadline, and that is binding on the city, in which we either have to approve the application, deny it, or approve it with conditions. And that includes any appeals that might happen to the city commission. So within that time frame, the city's decision must be rendered. And the applicant controls that 120-day and can extend it if need be. Certain types of applications, for example, the new middle housing applications, are provided with an expedited review time of 63 days. The public notice period is extremely important. Now, once that application is complete, we prepare mailed public notices within 300 feet of the site. They go to occupants and landowners, and we also put signs together like those blue ones shown here to be posted on the property. And we also create a web page for the project, which is linked or listed on the public notice so that people can go online and download the entire application and any other information about that proposal. By law, the public notice must also list all the relevant approval criteria, the location, and who to contact with any questions. Usually that's the reviewing planner. If the application requires a public hearing, meaning if it's a type 3 or higher application, it will note the hearing date and time and where it's going to be. So for type 3 and higher applications, public comments can be provided in writing, either before the hearing or at the hearing, right up until the decision-making body closes the public hearing. For type 2 applications, it's a 14-day public comment period. And that mailed notice also has a link to tips on how to write effective public comments, if that's useful. Application review, the types of applications we have are set out by state law, and they refer to the decision-making authority for those development approvals. And those range from, as Aquila said, fairly simple, non-discretionary decisions like where you can build an accessory structure like a shed. So we're really only looking at height, setbacks, size, and that sort of thing, to more discretionary decisions, which are governed by what they call clear and objective criteria. For example, a residential partition where you're splitting your residential lot into 2 lots. And that's a little more discretion, there's a little more code to deal with, and that requires public notice. but not a public hearing. And then the highest level of discretion is reserved for things like zone changes and variances, and then legislative applications. So legislative applications are those that create whole new policy or affect a big portion of the city, like a big rezoning for a comprehensive plan update or something like that. An example of a legislative decision would be those new middle housing rules that got adopted in late 2022. And that affected every zone district in the city. The applications, this is a screenshot of where you would go to look for development projects on the city website. You can get all the details about an application by clicking on that development projects link on the bottom right of the homepage, or you can type in the web page address that's on your public notice, and you can sort in that right-hand picture. There's a sort screen or filters field up there, and you can sort on project type, year, status, which is active or inactive, and the neighborhood. And you can also just scroll through all the projects. But if you're looking specifically for land use applications, you want to select that type, because if you select capital improvements, it's going to show you all the stuff that Public Works is building. And that's not development application, that's just Public Works projects and stuff like that. Step 5 is after we've done reviewing the application for approval with the criteria, we send out a notice of decision and the conditions of approval under which that decision was made. Those conditions are more explicit follow-up requirements for things like preparing final engineering drawings, dedicating public right-of-way, providing a revised construction plan or planting trees, building public utilities, and that sort of thing. So that notice of decision, or NOD as we call it, is provided to any person who testified in writing or verbally at a hearing. And that's why we request when you speak at a public hearing that you write your mailing address down so that we can actually mail you the notice of decision, because that's what the code requires. Appeals, the type 2 and higher decisions may all be appealed to the city commission once that notice of decision is issued, but they only can be appealed by the applicant or whoever commented during the public comment period or at the hearing in writing. That means they have a standing or a legal right to appeal the city's decision because they've participated previously in that decision process. Appeals are generally limited to the issues and approval criteria raised during the public comment period or hearing, and the appellant cannot introduce new issues that they didn't raise previously. These appeals require an appeal hearing before the city commission and a second public notice, and they must be dealt with within the 120-day deadline unless extended by the applicant. Once the city commission reaches a decision on an appeal, that is the city's final decision, but it can be appealed to the State Land Use Board of Appeals beyond the city. And I think that's it for planning. Now on to building.
Hello again, I'm Jim Sayers. Once everything has been approved through the land use process, then the applicant can submit for a building permit. So we've changed the realm. There are basically 4 different steps, and those are listed in bullet point there. And that also aligns with the 4 different groups of people in the department, in the division. The permit techs, they take in a permit. They'll review it to make sure that everything is there, so that they're able to move it on to the next step, which is the plan review. Plans examiners then will review those documents and make sure that they meet all the adopted codes and standards for the state and the jurisdiction. And then once that's done, then the inspections start. And the applicant will then call for inspections at different stages of construction. There are several things that are required inspections, and then there are several things that can be required based on the project. Some of the larger projects will have may have hundreds of inspections, like on the courthouse, or there are projects where we may have 3 inspections for the entire project. It just depends on the type and the breadth of the project. When the inspections are completed, then it goes to the building official to certify that all the work has been done, all the fees have been paid, all the conditions have been met, and then we'll issue a certificate of occupancy. This is just a review of the staff again. If you look over on the building side, we're divided up in those 3 groups. Permit techs are on the right. They are the front face of the division, of the department, really. They talk with applicants, engineers, architects, owners, as they come into to the counter, and one of their biggest roles, even though it's not the technical part of it, is just being that face that people can feel comfortable with, and they do an awesome job of that, by the way. But then on to the plans examiners in the center row. Some people are certified to do residential only, others can do residential and commercial. And then in inspections, it's the same. We have one person that only does residential, but he also does residential electrical and plumbing, so keep him pretty busy. So the plans examiners will review the plans. Building official first assigns to the plans examiner based on, their expertise. Plans examiners quite often find things that need to be corrected with plans. It doesn't mean that applicants don't know particularly what they're doing. It's just that we're looking at it through a different lens. And so they'll ask for revisions. And once those revisions are brought back, then they'll review those. And that can really affect the timeline. We can control our first look at plans, but when on the back and forth as we're trying to get to a clean set of plans for issuance, sometimes that affects the timeline. And once everything's all corrected and the plans are ready, then it's time to issue a permit. This photo here is the courthouse under construction right now. This incidentally is the first high-rise in Oregon City. That means that it's over 75 feet tall. And so it's pretty cool that we've got this structure going up right now. As I mentioned before, as we go through the process, we have a lot of inspections. The amount of concrete being poured in this one, I would guess that we'll have 50 inspections on concrete alone on this project. So the building inspectors, when they go out to do an inspection, they're not just looking at what they know from the code, they're also looking at the approved plans, which need to be available to them on the site, so that they can look at those plans, also use their knowledge of the code. They also have the code downloaded on their iPads so that they can do research if they need to in the field. Yeah, I guess the courthouse, inspections can be either highly technical or they can be fairly mundane, just depends on what they're doing. And they never know from day to day, what that workload's going to be and what they're going to be looking at. So It's a very interesting and challenging job. So when all those inspections are done and the applicant has, all the conditions of approval have been met and all the other departments and divisions have signed off, then we can issue a certificate of occupancy. And, you know, that signals that it's safe now for human occupancy. And I listed some of the examples there. And the last one you'll notice says TCO, which is temporary certificate of occupancy. And we can issue those if we've got some minor things that aren't complete, but it's not something that would jeopardize life safety or anything like that. On this one, they have, it has to do with, well, they can't get a generator in. Or no, they got a generator, they can't get the switchgear in for their electrical, so they're running off a generator. So we need to be able to be flexible enough to allow them to do that, in knowing that the supply chain just isn't, they just aren't able to get the equipment they need. But other than that, they've completed everything that they need to do for that project.
Okay, so for this slide, I realize I need a mouse, so I'm wondering if I can come over to your computer and try for a minute. I didn't really think that part through all the way.
I can also click things for you. I can click things for you if you want.
Sorry about that. I should have thought about that. All right, so I just wanted to show you how that development projects page works if you haven't been to it before. So hopefully this link will work. And IT's keeping us super safe. There we go, okay. Which I'm appreciative of. I'm not complaining about them keeping us super safe.
Your screen is not the
Okay,
same.
okay, good call. So let's go to Zoom, and I wonder how I can do that.
Yeah, if you share screen, you can also use a mouse. Should be able to, which one is that? This
Yeah,
one?
that one, yeah.
Should be able to do that.
Okay.
Is it still not? Okay. One moment.
Well,
Is that the final slide?
it's the final slide.
I found out PowerPoint thing, it should be able to make that easier.
You know, I'm trying to hit X and it's just not. There we go. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
And then, oh boy. As it adjusts.
Okay,
Let you scroll.
perfect.
There we go. Okay, that should work.
Okay. Okay, so why don't I just start from the beginning so you can see where to do this. All right, so here's development projects down here in the lower right. You're gonna click that. And wait for it to load in. There's a number of different ways to look for projects.
Now, just so everybody knows, you're now looking in the city website.
That's correct, yeah. This is available to anybody, yeah, on the city website. And so what I tend to do, so this is what Pete was talking about, where you can look by project type or year or status, neighborhood, or the title if you know it. So, but if sometimes you're driving down the road and you're like, where am I right now? I'm on 7th and Harrison, and I really want to know what that project is. Now, the little scrolly thing doesn't work. I think you just have to click the plus. And you're like, okay, I was driving by 7th and Harrison, and I really want to know what that project is. So let me zoom in on the map and then click this pin. And that brings you to this long title, which this means site plan. And we've changed titles over the year. So anyway, you can click on this and then you can get some information about that project. Who is the planner? when did we receive that application? Is it still going on? And then a little description of what that application is, and various documents. So these are some, I'll show you another example, but so some of the files have more files in them than others, but this will give you the application. And this might be, kind of depends on the application, but sometimes you can get the most information. I know, I'm sure, you can't read that? Really? Anyway, I can't read it either. I was Superman, I might be able to read it. Anyway, so you can zoom in and then just, it'll give you a little bit of information. Scroll through. Okay, so that's not the important part. And how do I, where's my back button here?
Just hiding beneath the toolbar.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
Okay, then here's what we're gonna do. Hide floating meeting controls. And now where's the back button?
Oh, you just have to X out of it.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so I think you get the idea, right? Okay, if you want me to do another example, I can, but, so that's how that tool works, and that's another way for you to just, inform yourself, and then you can let your neighborhoods know that this is another tool out there for them to look for, and you could use that neighborhood, way to sort out projects as well, so, all right, thank you. We did have one more slide, and all that slide said was questions. So if you have any questions or comments, then we're here to answer those questions for you.
I do.
Emma, you go ahead and control the questions, please.
Sounds good. Dennis Anderson.
Okay, I guess this is to Jim. Going through the appropriate steps, how many at each point in the steps, which you haven't indicated the fee or a fee that would be imposed on them. And I know you can't, each project has a different kind of set, but I mean, you're not indicating that there will be a fee for that step. And I think that's remiss.
Yeah, I can explain the fee structure. The fees are collected in the beginning. We collect the plan review fees so that covers the work that we're going to be doing for plan review. We also, when the permit is issued, collect all the fees for the planning fee, the transportation fee, the school district fees. All those things are collected and run through the building department. Our fees are based on a national fee structure that's updated every February. So we follow that. It's called the ICC evaluation table, and fees are not collected for anything else unless there's let's say there's another revision that comes in for a project, then there's going to be extra fees for additional plan review at that point, and it's an hourly rate on those kinds of things.
Well, yes, and I readily understand that there'll be variables and there could be appeals and a whole series of things. What I was trying to get in at is that when you're in the first stage, the pre-app, and you're confronting the new applicant, and if there was a method or a device or a page that would indicate to that applicant the set of fees as we go along the steps. And I think it's good. I like, one of a plus side is I like your staff and the friendly faces, so you have a recognition of like who it is that one will be talking to. But I think it would be advantageous if the applicant had an idea at what stage they're expected to pay a fee for, say, you know, I mean, I'm talking beyond the neighborhood meeting. I'm talking about, you know, the reviews, the building permits, and then I was a little, so anyway, my point is that I think it would be good if there was an indication to the applicant that, and the public, that these fees will be required as we go along. You're implying that the fees are all up front. Well, how can you have that up front if you don't know in the course of the project, something arises that hasn't met the standard, the code, or some nuance that might be determined by that specific location that's different than somebody else's neighborhood? You get what I mean? I'm just asking.
Yes, I follow you, absolutely.
Well, if I can jump in a little bit. So part of the pre-application, there is a fee for the pre-application conference. And part of that conference goes through what the land use is going to be and what the fee is associated with the land use review. And that is a different set of fees and fee structure than the building code. So it starts with that land use, and they are given the applicant will get an idea at that point of what the land use fee will be. And I think there's probably some discussion about system development charges, SDCs, and that's what Jim was talking about with the transportation, school, sewer, water. Some of that is called not a construction excise tax, but some of it's kind of a pass-through where we're collecting fees for other districts. And so they will get some indication of that, but they aren't charged separately for inspections. And then you're right, there is a difference based on the type of building. And so there's a pretty extensive list of how we do building valuation. And then there's a value that's given per square foot for that type of building. So it's almost a little too complicated to lay it all out at the beginning, but we can indicate, you know, at what point there will be a fee, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I could add just a little bit more, the valuation table gives us what the value is for the project, right? And then the fees are applied to that value. They're a portion, not a portion of, but it's a percentage of. And
They're highly variable. Highly variable.
Well, it depends on the project, because a concrete building costs more to build than a wood building. So there's a different value per square foot for all those different types of buildings. Now, that is available on our website. People want to look at it, and so is our fee structure. So it's all available.
That's kind of what I wanted.
Yeah, it's all on the website in our forums.
I mean, I'm you know, not to take all this time, but I'm looking at the type 1, you know, the over-the-counter kind of thing. But you know, having lived in a neighborhood for a few years, I know that residents have come on with great surprise that, like, oh, another fee when we're dealing with one of the steps in the progression to the completion. And it sometimes surprises the applicant to know that, oh, we have another fee for this. And then, so I mean, you know, it's nicely laid out, and I just think that would be a helpful thing for any applicant in the future to be advised that there are fees along the way, be it type 1 or all the way out to a much more. And I think your presentation was good, and I think most of the presentation was about larger developments than like a single family. Thank you.
Will?
I have a question about, and it really only pertains, I think, to the historic neighborhoods. It just seems to me that there's a bit of an equity between like people who follow the rules with all the historic guidelines, and then people who just sort of, like, you look at some of the housing changes that have been made to update a house or whatever, and there is no logic there. And like, how does the city deal with that? And it just doesn't seem fair in a way that people are following the rules and then, you know, paying huge amounts of money to make sure that all the
requirements are met, the geohazard, you know, all the studies and making sure that your trees are staying alive. And then the next person goes down and cuts down all the trees in their property before anybody says boo. Like, what are, you know, like, it's a little frustrating for those of us who are trying to keep it all together.
I'll take a stab at that. Historic review in Oregon City is it's a more complicated process than a regular land use process. It requires either historic review board approval if it meets a certain threshold,
Right.
or there's certain things that staff can approve. That is a separate set of regulations than the overlay districts. You know, we've got one set of code that governs geologic hazards and that sort of thing. As for people cutting down trees, planning staff doesn't know about it until after it happens, and then we have to send out a code enforcement after the fact. And, you know, sometimes people don't get permits up front. We only catch the people who come in and ask for permits. Frequently, we don't drive around the city looking for infractions, so we don't have the staff or resources to do that. The code enforcement department can be called out quickly to a site if they get a call, and we often do that. It'd be like someone's grading over here or someone's taking out trees. We'll get code enforcement to go over and give them a stop work order and say, call planning, call building, and, you know, just talk to us before you do any further work. That's the best case scenario, and sometimes, you know, is just try to stop them and then talk them into coming into the city and getting the permit they should have applied for in the first place. So there's always going to be those cases that go on, and we try to catch as many as we can. But it is a complaint-driven process. So honest people who want to do the right thing and come in and talk to the planning and building department first, you know, no problem. Everybody's going to know what the rules are. But if people want to ignore that and just go ahead, there's very little that the city can do about that.
You can't recall someone, like somebody builds a hideous porch in front of their very nice old, their old house. Like,
on a construction project, it's different than someone cutting down a tree. You can't.
But if it's a construction, like, how does that work? Like,
Pardon?
How does that work if they build something that's not compliant?
Well, if they build something that's not compliant, they can either go through a permit process to make it compliant, or they may be required to remove part of it.
Is that enforced?
Well, we're talking about a hypothetical situation. What
Okay,
kind of
just
thing
curious.
you're talking about?
Just curious.
If we get a code enforcement complaint, then yeah, it is. I know we have one case where somebody's working on a window, right? Like, I think it was in the historic district, and the wrong type of window was put in without permission, basically. And so, but it takes a long time to work through it, and we have to have extensive documentation if code enforcement is going to take it to court and then enforce whatever, civil infraction there is, and collect. A lot of times it may just result in collecting a fee. We've had another case where there was a lot of vegetation taken out, and their way of resolving it is having to pay a large fee, but it went on for probably the last 5 or 6 years to actually get it to come to a close. So, so it gets enforced slowly if code enforcement, if we're made aware of it, and then they may be able to bring it up to code, right, and go through a permitting land use review process.
Yeah, we want the person who should have pulled the permit to voluntarily comply before we ever get to court. And that's generally the way it's done. They come in, we say, these are the steps you need to take to get it into compliance. And that might include going through a type 2 land use process with public notice and comment, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Pete, this is Bob. I have a question on that, or question/comment. When I was doing work in the city of Portland, if you were caught without taking a permit out, and specifically for me it was furnaces or air conditioners, then the city had the provision that you were charged twice the normal application fee. Does the city of Oregon City have anything like that?
No application.
Well, that is a fee structure that was changed by the state legislature. You used to be able to collect a double fee for work without permit. Now the fee that can be collected needs to be equal to the amount of time spent doing the investigation. So it's a different way of calculating that, and I think what happened with the double fee was some of those were pretty astronomical penalties. So it was made to be more appropriately distributed to the different projects, so that work without permit wasn't punished with a huge fee on one and then with a minimal fee on another.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That all happened after I retired.
Yeah, it had not that long ago.
Yeah. Thank you.
Carla?
Is there such a thing, because I know that the code itself is sometimes overwhelming for people to look at. So for the basic person renovating their home, like a Q&A sheet that they could follow, and then it links to code. Is there a website like that that we could refer to just residents to be able to follow?
Depending on the project, we have some, how do I, how do I put a fence up? How do I build a shed? And that sort of thing. And then each of the for example, residential applications, whether it's an addition or a new house, the packets are something we're constantly revising so that it's more intuitive and stepwise. The code's kind of built in there, but you're not reading code, you're working through a pattern.
Right.
So that's what we attempt to do, and we're willing to take suggestions if people have them for how to improve our packets. Yeah.
I just wonder if people had a simpler way to at least see the basics, and then if they need more details, then it links to the code to where maybe we get more people to actually want to follow it if they knew that they should have bought a permit, or at least a simpler Q&A so that the basic person could try to comprehend it more.
Yep.
And then the other thing I was going to mention is we've seen a lot more heat. And so there's been a lot of development, especially in my neighborhood, where there hasn't been a dust policy really. I know there is one and there's a code enforcement violation, but is there any active movement to try to minimize that if possible?
Yeah. Now what were we, I kind of missed what,
The dust that
the dust?
we're seeing a lot of projects in our neighborhood, especially being abandoned and almost sitting vacant, and we don't know when they're going to get done. And during the process of them, there's been a lot of dust and, put in the air, and it's been warmer. And, how do we make that better for everybody, including the developers, so that they don't get fined?
Well, in construction projects, they're required to keep the dust down.
We haven't had that in our neighborhood.
But
It's been really bad.
So if they're, again, this is something it's complaint driven. So if we hear about it, then it will go to code enforcement, and they'll make a stop by the contractor and say, hey, you need to get a water truck on this and be taking care of the dust problem.
I was even driving by certain parts where they were doing the dust, and then they were letting the grass go, and grass pollen was really high, and it was really bad, and it almost was a fire hazard. Like if someone was smoking a cigarette and just threw it, it would have lit all on fire.
Yeah, I wish we were able to hit all those, but unless somebody calls in and says, something, we don't hit every area of the city all the time.
Okay, thank you.
Dee Dee?
Hi, I know with our city having conversations about having a climate action plan, I know that we don't have one in effect at this point. Is there any way we can effectively work with our land developers and tree retention? I know we do this, we wish you'd kind of like to do it. We hope you save some trees on the properties, but is there any way we can enforce tree and retention. We used to back in the day, you had to build around some trees. And now it's clear cut heaven, and then you get to pay to play. Even in an Enrod area, which,
Well, I guess
you're
that's
supposed
the
to
way
retain
to,
those trees.
Excuse me.
I think that's, right now, the way the code is set up.
That's what I'm saying. Is
right?
there any hopes with a climate action plan
To change the code?
Yeah, to change a code, to be able to say, we're gonna walk the property first and say, these are so close to the edges, you could save these trees at least, you know? This is where the sidewalk would be, we'll bend the sidewalk.
I think that's input that we could take once, if there's a climate action plan that gets moving, that would be good feedback that came out of that work that would then influence, changing the zoning code and maybe even a comprehensive plan. But there isn't anything at this point that would
I'm
get
just
at what
saying,
you're
is that
saying.
how
Yeah.
could we? What a climate action plan, take that back with you, Adam, please. Our city needs a climate action plan. We can work with our parks, we can work with.
I'll piggyback on it. I mean, getting back to the process, a legislative application is usually started after a pretty significant public involvement process. So if the direction comes to do it and to concentrate on certain parts of the code, then planning will go away and work on writing that, and then we'll do public involvement to inform that process, and eventually it would become a legislative thing. But that direction has to come from not just the planning department. It comes from the community and from our leadership.
I think our community has been squeaking about it, but we need to be able to have some power to change that. We can't do that without staff saying, let's work on a zone change.
Well, I'm saying it comes from other people,
I know,
from
you
staff.
can't do that, but you can. I mean, there's ways you can work together and say, we could do these. I mean, other cities have it.
Right, and so.
Copy them. Copy what's good.
We can write code, we just need direction.
Yeah, and that is how a lot of the code comes about, is we pick pieces of other cities' codes and what they've done that works. But one of the things that, I'm gonna take this opportunity to step on my soapbox a little bit. And one of the things that is important to me and is kind of a North Star guiding principle for me in our work is that we carry out the policy direction of our city commission. That's why we're there. We don't go and start projects that they're not interested in because they were elected and represent you and your neighborhood. And so we're not gonna just start, the example I like to use is in the last city I worked for, the planners, because it's a planner's dream to do a downtown plan. So the planners would always come to me and say, let's do a downtown plan. I'm like, I have not heard that from our elected officials, that's what they're interested in. So we're not gonna spend our time on something they're not interested in. So to your point, Dee Dee, with the climate action plan, when these bigger plans come about, and then the way they get implemented is by changing code, right? And that's what's gonna happen with the overall Parks Master Plan as well, is that they're going through this extensive community involvement process. Eventually, it'll lead to a comprehensive plan amendment to incorporate it into the comprehensive plan. And that's coming from direction from the city commission. And so that's kind of my North Star guiding principle. And so I'm happy to talk and have coffee about things you'd like to see that, and just, dream. So that's another thing. Thank you.
I know
I'm
you're
off
on
my
the side.
soapbox.
The side's good.
Are there any more questions? Okay, I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Aquila, Pete, and Jim, for a lot of good information there, and I hope that the members can take that information and use it back with their individual neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next item on the presentations is the city commission CIC guidelines. Now, a few meetings back, not too many meetings back, the city commission was speaking about the postcard issue and the political thing that has been brought up. And they said that perhaps they need to have a meeting or meetings to establish some guidelines for the CIC as a result of this issue. And I plan to address the city commission about this issue, and I think it may be a little bit overkill. This has never happened before to my memory or anybody else's memory that I've talked to. And one instance, in my opinion, does not justify the cost of having an entire city commission and staff going through and trying to establish some guidelines or guidance that may not even be necessary. The way I see this problem possibly solved is that when we get a new member on the CIC, that member have a meeting with the current chair of the CIC and the city liaison and discuss some of the, standards or rules of conduct or recommended rules of conduct that apply to the CIC. And that should be sufficient. I also would question whether a discussion like that in regard to the CIC would then be required to consider all the other committees in the city on this same kind of issue. They don't have postcards, but there might be some other conduct that the city might or should consider. And then I guess my last concern is this really a CIC issue or is it a neighborhood issue? So anyway, that's where I'm going on this idea of the city commission establishing new guidelines, and I'd like to have some input from members before I go forward with this.
Bob, I'd like to also add that if the city commission, puts in guidelines for the CIC, they should put in guidelines for each and every other city that they have, the library board, historic review board, absolutely every one of them. So I think this might be just a little bigger issue than just CIC.
I think I don't need to call on everybody. I think we can just, I think this is a little bit more of like a round table scenario.
I think there's a balance of obviously, like Bob was saying, rules of conduct in terms of meeting with, the new representative, in terms of talking about, ethics, code of conduct. But, when we went back and looked at our bylaws and reorganized the position we wanted to take, and I feel like our leadership here has been non-political and promoting non-political for a long time, since I've been on the CIC. And I think, how long has that been now? At least 3 years? 4 years. The whole point that we took a hold of our own bylaws is to have a little bit more independence to represent the community to the elector, in general, so that we can also guide the neighborhoods and empower the neighborhood associations. So I'm kind of with Bob in terms of, I think if the city commission puts complete guidelines on that, I would say more that maybe the commission could work cooperative with our chair and communicate directly rather than making it so legalistic. That's just my opinion.
I don't know, I personally think it's probably pretty important for both, like you say, the CIC and the neighborhood committees to be, like, I know that our neighborhood, we try very hard to make sure that things are non-political. And that's said, and part of it is Jesse, who is our president, is a lawyer. And so he very quickly says, you know, so I don't know, maybe we should just all sign a code of conduct when you join, when you're either a representative for CIC or for your neighborhood, and that's just part of what's done, you know, and you read it and you're responsible for following that code of conduct. And it's just out there, you know, it's non-negotiable. And then it doesn't mean, you know, that, I just think it takes a lot of time for you, Bob, to have to meet with everybody over, you know, on one hand, it's not that much time, but it's one more thing. And it's one more thing for a city leader to have to meet with each individual person for every single neighborhood or every member of the CIC, whereas we could read a code of conduct and you either agree to it or you don't. So that's my 2 bits.
And each and every neighborhood is different. In Kenema, it's the chair, the neighborhood chair, who's responsible for doing the postcards. It's not the CIC reps. So I don't know how everyone's bylaws are set up for their neighborhood, but they're all just a little different.
Fortunately, in Park Place, it's not the chair, but the secretary that.
Okay, there you go.
But the chair gives the agenda to the secretary, who then does the mailing. So I don't know if we want to, it may be something to review like every year, where there's new people being added. We don't need to have a special meeting, I don't think, but maybe let's just go over it again and make sure that we're not sliding off into places we're not supposed to be going.
I gradually absorbed the idea that politics were a no-no. So it was not clear cut at the beginning of my tenure here. So Will's suggestion kind of makes a lot of sense. Just put it in front of people. These are kind of the rules we go by, and maybe that sets individuals off on the right foot. And then to your points, if it's not the CIC rep that does the card, you at least know, and you're part of the body, and you know, we're responsible for transmitting information from this body to our neighborhoods. So maybe that's how it all knits together. But yeah, I wasn't aware of rules, you know. Fortunately, I didn't step outside of them, but you know, I mean, it's not a bad thing to set expectations.
I think also the fact is if you're a neighborhood and you have a lot of land use applications or activity, if you're a leader of a neighborhood association and you say your opinion versus fact, that's where things can get political. And I guess as a neighborhood association, if you're doing leadership, which we get guidance from the CIC, is to state facts and not opinions as much, and promote that, just also the CIC, but also through the neighborhood associations to be informative.
So I can. Anybody be interested in joining a ad hoc committee to form this suggested code of conduct?
I turned this off to blow my nose. Sorry. I turned it off for a moment.
I didn't catch what was stated.
This is Steve, and I'm willing to volunteer.
Okay.
I'm willing to too, Bob. This is Carla.
Okay, Emily.
Sarah will volunteer.
I think we all could do it. Isn't it? I don't think it's rather that difficult. I mean, why don't we just take it upon ourselves to work? I mean, isn't that why we joined together? To come up with an action plan, if this is the way we want to phrase it, and establish guidelines. I'm a little I'm a little concerned about, are we imposing guidelines on other neighborhoods? I think we would have to have everybody represented that's here participate in this so that we don't, incur a policy or a guideline that might be not acceptable for another neighborhood. I think this is what we do at CIC. We talk as a body of neighborhoods, and I think we would be incumbent to do it all together. So yeah, why can't we just have it a part of our regular meetings? Just spend some time discussing it, these guidelines.
Fair enough.
General opinion about that?
I'm all about it.
The general gist is it works for everyone. Is there anyone who opposed to
I think
this?
it sounds fair.
Okay, well then, what I'll do forward is I'll put this subject on each agenda, and we can devote, 20 minutes, 25 minutes to this discussion and go from there. How's that sound?
Give our bullet points to the commission.
And if I could just talk a little bit about some background behind this. So we all know why this issue has come to the city commission. And I don't know we can necessarily say that this has never happened before. I think what we can say is that this is the first time that it's happened where a sitting city commissioner has brought an example to a city commission meeting to bring.
I object to what you're saying there, because what you're saying is not honest and not true. You don't have the facts. And I think you're supposed to be here just to observe.
Well, I'm also here to explain the city commission. That's why I'm here. So, and so that was not a lie. I'm just saying that I don't think we can say that it's never happened before. All I'm saying is that I think all we can say is that this is the first time a city commissioner has been there and brought it to the attention of the rest of the city commissioners as an example of what a single neighborhood association has done. And I will also say that pretty much all of the big reforms that we ever get in code and ethics come when there has been a lapse, and it's been able to show us that there is a loophole or an area that needs to be fixed. So I also don't buy the fact that it's only happened once, so we can just let it be. The reason why I got involved, as you all know, is because of the recall of our former mayor. And I wanted to get on the commission because there were some things with the charter originally that I wanted to see fixed. We referred them to the voters and they passed overwhelmingly. And so this is something that the commission is interested in because there has been a breach of trust. I'm going to be there at those meetings, obviously, and making sure that the ability for neighborhood associations to spend their money as they see fit, whether it's on postcard, whether it's on a sandwich board, is something that's protected and defended, because the independence between these two institutions is important to me. But it's also important to note, when it was brought up that this needs to be done with other committees, we don't fund the other committees in the ways that we fund the Citizen Involvement Committee and the neighborhood associations. And I will say one last thing. I was very proud that we were able to secure the $8,000 increase for the neighborhood associations this last budget. And if I am ever going to defend an increase to the budget to my colleagues, I think there needs to be a buildup of trust. And so all this is just establishing general guidelines between the relationship between the city, which funds the CIC, and the neighborhoods. And I don't think that having simple guidelines to make this uniform is anything that should cause much alarm.
Any other?
Carla would like to say something.
The only thing I can say, as a neighborhood association, I have had to do a lot less in terms of postcards and really fight to keep the neighborhood association going. So I really do appreciate the $8,000 increase, but we're going to still struggle with a lot of things in terms of those postcards and a lot of things. And I really appreciate Bob fighting for us in terms of trying to advocate for as much as possible. So that's just, but we are grateful for whatever we can get to. So thank you.
And I am too.
Okay, I have some comments about that a little later in the meeting. Let's see here. Emma, are there any information about the 7,000 households on the electronic utility billing being used for neighborhood association announcements?
So sorry, I'm currently pulling something up and I do have an update about that. So that is what I am pulling up.
Just so you all know about this, there are 7,000 customers, utility customers, that have provided their email address for that information. And it was suggested that maybe we use those email addresses to help us announce neighborhood meetings. So go ahead with that.
Yes, so on the agenda is a communications update from Jared and I. So we will both be updating during this. This is just a little mini presentation with some figures and some updates. The first thing before we start that I did want to update on, which doesn't have entirely to do with communications, but does have to do with the CIC, is that Gaffney Lane is opting to become an active neighborhood association again. So there's a man named Dave Hunt who got in contact with me and has emailed Bob as well about starting that back up. Originally, he was just asking how to get involved, and I said, well, would you like to start it? And he said, yes, I'd love to. So that's really exciting news. I just wanted to say that before the rest of the communications update, because they have nothing to do with each other at the moment, but hopefully there will be another person joining. Okay, on to the communications update. So as Bob said, this is largely to do with the mailing list, and also I have a little tidbit about social media after. So just wanted to explain how these emails have been collected, and Jared will expand on this. I just have three small notes about emails are collected from the Oregon City Utilities List. Residents can opt in to their neighborhood mailing list, so we are not just cold emailing people, you have to opt in. And all neighborhood associations can use this for future communications. Really, the goal with this is lessening the amount of postcards, physical postcards that you need to send, so that you can stretch that budget as far as possible. It's going to be up to each neighborhood association what, exactly what is done with that list. You will not get the list that is going to be with us because it is sensitive information. But your choice will be whether to take those residents off of your postcard list, therefore increasing your budget within the neighborhood association, or the other option, completely sending out those postcards and using the email list on top of that. So I'll pass it over to Jared.
Yeah, first off, I really have to give some credit and kudos to our GIS department, because we were able to separate the email addresses from and physical addresses on that utility opt-in list. And I thought I was going to have to go through all 7,000 people and place them directly, but they were able to use some sort of technological magic and organize everything by neighborhood. So that was a huge time saver and really helpful. We kind of had the opportunity to do a bit of a proof of concept with the process with, I think it was Hillendale.
Hillendale and Tower Vista.
Yeah, we basically, I sent out one email to all the people who have those addresses there, alerting them about an upcoming meeting, and it's saying, if you'd like to receive further notifications, please click here and subscribe. I can only do the one email like that due to spam laws and so forth, and if we end up getting too many spam reports, it actually blacklists the city's entire email server, and then the IT guy comes down and yells at me, and I would really like to not do that. So we tested the process. It worked pretty well. I think you said it was one of the better attended meetings.
It was, but I do always ask, and oddly enough, they saw the weird little signs I made more than.
Weird little
emails.
signs. Nice.
Yeah,
I like it.
I'll tell more about that when it's my turn to
Yeah.
talk. Yeah.
We did get some subscriptions. I think it was 16 or so. And we'll go into further how to expand on this in a little bit. But it did seem to work, and I think it's a process we'll be able to refine as we move forward, and that we can work together and make sure that all your communications go out to as many people as possible on possibly another avenue that hopefully will help increase participation.
And to speak on the 7,000, there were 7,000 emails in just the Hillendale and Tower Vista. No?
Oh, that was the whole.
Yeah, that was.
No. Okay. Okay, my fault. Sorry about that. 7,048 on the whole utilities list, and it was, I should have put the figure in it. That was my fault. But I believe there were upwards of 1,000 for Hillendale and Tower Vista, and then going from there, there will be a large amount for each neighborhood association that we do have access to. The 16 new mailing list opt-ins were as of last Thursday, so that is when it had been live for, I believe, 2 weeks. It had been live for 2 weeks, that option, so we are still getting more people with every day that it is active. People can still opt in. And then, okay, there we go. And this was a flyer that Jared made for the National Night Out. It was register for updates from your neighborhood association. There were QR codes for each neighborhood association that that were available to scan that would sign you up to opt into the email list.
And actually, I was really excited. We did get a few people actually to use the QR codes and sign up for the neighborhoods. I know Elyville got one. I'm trying to remember the other one, and I'm sorry, I can't pull it off the top of my head, but there were a couple people who were interested on that. Rivercrest was Rivercrest. And again, it was kind of another test of concept. The whole goal on this is to, while I can only send out the one email until somebody subscribes, we can put the opportunity for people to subscribe out there as much as we want. So I will have these out there, both the links and the QR codes, depending on the medium, on social media. I wanted to have it in the fall trail news, but the trail news is already printing as we speak. So it'll have to go in the winter trail news, but the e-trail news, emails, newsletter, social media, and so forth. And we can put these out there. I would also suggest that in your communications at the neighborhoods, you would include your specific link to help, again, spread the word to anybody else who wants to be part of them. And, the QR codes being simple, I've got them saved. We can put them on the postcards if that's something you'd like as well, again, so people can kind of enhance the way they're getting the information.
Yeah, and we can provide those individual links as well as the QR codes so that those are accessible to you. The next part is just about social media aspects of, the next part is just about social media aspects of communication. So we would like to take questions on this part now.
Yeah, could that be posted at places like the library, public meeting places, school,
Posters.
You're reading my mind.
Thank you.
Yep. And one, I forgot to say this, one opportunity could be, we could print these out and put them in the utility bill mailers that go out at the month. There is a cost to that. That's about $1,000 that we could split from, each of the neighborhoods equally to come out of the CIC budget, if that's something you would like to do.
Now, once you get the email permission to communicate with them, how do we remove that address from the neighborhood association list?
We don't have that figured out, do we?
We haven't figured out an easily automated way of doing that. It'd be beyond, okay, thank you, here's your email address, what's your physical address, and we'll pull you off the postcard if you like. I haven't been able to come up with a more easy way beyond that yet, hopefully, but I'm not sure the
Yeah, I think
technology
that
exists.
The main objective, of course, would be to reduce the postcard budget.
Precisely. I think it's going to be more of a manual type of thing on that right now, unless I can come up with something different, but.
Yeah, okay, well, thank you so much for all your work and research for that. Appreciate it.
Well, I mean, hopefully it accomplishes our goal. I'm excited to see it work.
Yeah, huge congratulations to Jared for figuring that out. That is a great resource. Does anybody have any other questions about this at the moment? Yeah.
If we do the QR codes, could we, in that mailing, say, my mailing meeting is next month, just post the time and location? I think you can do an insert, it's 8.5 by 11, and you can print on both sides, so you've got a lot of communication that you can get up on the.
Are you asking if this could be added to your postcard?
Well, no. The mailing, the billing mailing.
Oh, the utility bill, yeah.
The insert.
Got it.
Yeah, it's 8.5 by 11. I think it's one-sided. And as I said, it's about $1,000 for us to, anytime we put something into the mailers.
But along with this here, we could put our meeting dates and times for.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, I'm sorry. Potentially, if there's room, I could get rid of the prettiness up top and just go with some information and so forth and have the QR codes. But there's opportunities there, yes.
Anything else? Okay, I just have one little tidbit about social media. This was something I met with Hillendale and Terra Vista, so Sarah and Josh, about communications that could be used in addition to and in lieu of postcards, really making a comprehensive communications plan. These are just a few things that I wanted to share out to everybody. So the number one is active Facebook pages. A lot of people at National Night Out that I talked to were commenting on they know their neighborhood association, they get the postcards. What they're looking for is the social media presence, especially for younger parents. That was really big. And younger parents, they often were asking about Facebook pages. I did not have all the information on the Facebook pages readily available at National Night Out. But that is something to really think of going forward, is active Facebook pages. I put Instagram in there because it's very easy to tie them together and cross-promote. If you are more adept at Facebook and don't really care about Instagram, which is totally fair, you can just have them post at the same time and you never even have to log into Instagram, which is very, very nice. And what goes along with that is Facebook groups and events. If you have a Facebook group for your neighborhood, that is a great way to interact with people. I'm sure many of you are probably in Facebook groups. I know that I'm even in a lot of them, despite the fact that I don't use Facebook for anything else but that. And then Facebook events. Nice thing about Facebook events is you can invite everyone you're friends with. So if you're friends with people in your neighborhood, you can slightly bother them a little bit about it. So that is really nice. And then the last thing is about updating the city website. I've gotten a few messages about how we can update the city website. And I was just speaking with Jared about this today, that the new city site is going to be up pretty soon. Jared can speak a little bit more about this. But currently, the information that is on the website, if Jared wants to connect about this, I think it makes more sense.
Just to give you guys a little bit of an inside scoop there, because this hasn't gone fully public yet, but the city will be unveiling a new website in the near future. We're doing, I don't want to say final edits, because when you have 2,000 pages, it's going to be a ongoing process forever. But really, finalizing a lot of the main facing pages. Anything that we fix on the existing site right now is just going to have to be duplicated on the new site. So if this is something that is not an immediate need, we can hold on to it and make sure it's done with the new website. Now, if this is something that's wholly inaccurate and needs to be updated now, by all means, please let me know and we'll fix it. But if this is more along the lines of an improvement versus a need, get that to me as well, and we can incorporate that on the news site.
So this is to say, email Jared with all of your updates.
And one thing I also wanted to ask for, if you are active on Facebook or become active on Facebook as your groups and associations, please, if you like, tag the Oregon City Hall account when you post something. I don't know how familiar you are with how Facebook works in algorithms, but it's annoying and it doesn't. And unfortunately, I don't see everything I need to see on the feed coming through naturally. So if you tag the City Hall page, then I will get a notification about that and be able to help share your information as well across the city social channels.
Okay, I just want to, I just overheard that, so I just want to comment. So it's not a hashtag. No, so tagging, you can put, an @ symbol and then just type in Oregon City Hall. What it'll do is, if you've ever seen on a Facebook post that a name is highlighted and clickable, that's what a tag is. So if you just @ and then you can type in Oregon City Hall, sometimes it'll do it without the @ but I don't know, that's a little advanced. So,
City Hall.
which I understand. Yeah, Oregon City Hall, then it's clickable and we get tagged in it and can promote.
There's two cities.
Cities there twice?
I believe so, yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's-
Oregon City Hall.
Yeah, there is a
There's
dash there.
And can I speak in? Yeah. Okay, something that Emma taught Josh and I that was something we weren't already doing was we already had a Facebook group going on. Okay, so we thought that was good enough. But Emma taught us that without having and also having a Facebook page that they can tag so that our message gets amplified, you're missing out. So I've created a Facebook page in addition to the group, and it's an important thing to get more of your word out. So
It's one of those things that it's kind of I don't want to say double-edged sword, but groups are great for engagement on Facebook. When you're in a group, more people tend to see your content than your page, but groups can be limited by how much participation you can get from outside, like City Hall. So the page is another way of doing that. You can have the page, run the group. It's a mess. It's a mess. I'm sorry. I manage social for a living. It is a mess, but it's doable, and I would be happy to help anybody if you have any questions at some point.
Yeah, this is an ongoing process. There are many elements that are usable, such as your group can be the first thing that people see when they get on your page. It can be pinned so that they go to your page and immediately join your group. So there are various things that can happen as you keep going and keep exploring all the wonderful, wonderful tools that, please note the sarcasm in my voice, but tools that Facebook has to offer. Okay, I believe that is the end of our presentation. Does anybody have questions on the social media aspect of things?
How do we get trained?
I'm sorry.
How do they get trained in using Facebook and social media aspects?
I've been a computer geek for a million years, since long before there was even a thought of an internet. But I don't get online.
No, I trust me, I get it. When I teach classes on social media, I say I've been doing this so long, I've actually run MySpace pages for brands. So, I mean, I've been doing this since the beginning. And even I'm sometimes just scratch my head. And I mean, I used to have hair when I started this. I mean, let's just say that. But yes, it is a process. I'd be happy to help anybody if they've got any questions.
Yep. How do I link it to my CompuServe account?
I think you need a DeLorean that gets 1.21 gigawatts, goes back in time at 88 miles an hour.
Right.
That went straight over my head. I was like, I'm about the same age as the internet, so don't always
she
get
rubs
that.
it in. Thank you.
Well, me and Adam, so yeah.
Surrounded.
Well, all I can say is this old man is real glad to hear the computer geek gurus say they don't understand everything too.
Yeah, okay. I will get this off the screen. I do have one more update. If I can manage to get this off of the screen, I don't know where my cursor just went. Okay. My final update is that I am leaving my position. What? I know, very unfortunate. I am moving to Bend, Oregon.
Everybody's moving to Bend.
Everybody is moving to Bend. I am one of those evil people from California who is moving to Bend. So unfortunately, I am.
More like the weather you're from.
Yeah, it definitely is. Unfortunately, I will be leaving. So I will be leaving your position. The position is your staff liaison. Jared is here to support, as well as, I'm going to forget her last name. Oh, no.
Shauna Kaufman.
Shauna Kaufman.
Shauna Kaufman is Tony Conkle's assistant, and she'll be helping me fill the gap until we can find. We'll never find a replacement for Emma, but until we find another person for that position.
Yes, so I am here until the 18th. So I am available for lots of media training until then, if you would like anything. And then after the 18th, I will be moving on.
Well, that's a disappointing announcement.
Yeah,
Tell me about it.
Here. I know.
Okay, I have to go back to the CIC budget. It's driving me crazy, and Adam, I'd like to get a meeting with you and the mayor to discuss in detail what has happened with this budget, because the $8,000 raise is non-existent. In the old budget from our spreadsheet, which is the one that we used, not the $26,000 at the 35,000 foot level, but our budget at the 5,000 foot level, showed that we had available $1.86 per household per year. The new budget shows that we have $1.88 per household per budget. I could go into more details, but one example is Elyville allocation goes from $3,227.10 a year, raised up to $3,261.80 a year. Not a lot of difference there. But anyway, Adam, I'll be getting with you and the mayor, and maybe we can have a one-on-one discussion about how this whole mess needs to be resolved.
That would be great.
Okay. And until it does, I'm going to go crazy.
The director of finance, I spoke with him, and he is also very happy to join in this meeting.
Oh, good. Yeah, good. That'd be great. And,
Yep.
okay, let's see here. Now we go to a roundtable. And we'll start with Anima, Linda.
Kanima, we are getting ready for our ice cream social. That is going to be the 20th of August. We have secured without fees the shelter, and we're really looking forward to doing this. We have started asking businesses for to donate for our ice cream social, and we also have a speaker who will be talking about the Kanima Cemetery. And that's going to be the 20th between 3 and 5.
Am I picking it up?
Yep.
There's, we're also planning at the ice cream social to gather more neighbors to get involved in the Pioneer Cemetery. It's been a sort of a ghost kind of like ad hoc group that's existed for a number of years, carried on with people who have been a part of the original Kanima setup, and the son of the former person that owned my house has been very active to invigorate the neighbors to get back on board. We do it once a year. We clean up the Pioneer Cemetery for the Memorial Day weekend, and then the year goes by. And it's a great little historic cemetery, and there's a lot of effort by a number of people, maybe about half a dozen, and we're choosing to meet on the ice cream social to announce it to the other neighbors within the neighborhood and get a more active, larger group to help maintain the area. We're also seeking ways, there are funds and grants available for revitalizing historic cemeteries. And we've looked into that, and we have a number of people to talk to about that. We're also going to dovetail with Metro on the betterment and the maintenance of this cemetery. And it's about a half a mile back from Children's Park. For those of you who've walked back there and done a little hiking, you're probably familiar with the cemetery. And I think it needs to be better maintained, as this group feels. And there's, as I mentioned, grants and other kinds of funds that can, get the headstones back up and plan and maintain the property. And so we're really excited about that, and there's a number of people that are very active, and we're hoping to encourage that at the Ice Cream Social. So I want you to know about that, because I think you'll all be invited to come out there someday and check it out. That's it. Thank you.
I'm inviting myself.
Okay, you can come.
Okay, the next would be Caulfield. Dan?
Not much. Took the last 2 months off as nobody shows up for any meetings, and our next meeting's in September, and we have a group of good people coming to speak, and as soon as we get it confirmed, I'd like to pass it along to the rest of the people on the committee. That's about it.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Elyville, Carla?
You want to talk to?
Yeah, you go.
So we're meeting for steering tomorrow night. We're having an
Can't hear you.
Oh,
Can't hear you, Carla.
can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
No?
Can you,
Not very well.
can you hear me now?
There you go.
Okay. So we are having our steering meeting tomorrow. We took June and July off just because the attendance is low. We're having an ice cream social at Barclay Hills Park on the 26th. We're just showing up like we typically do, and I'm not gonna organize the fire department to go just because I'm not sure, if I've gotten used to not making arrangements in advance, and I don't want to put out our fire department to have to make accommodations so closely without causing any problems. On the 26th, we're doing ice cream social. I'm going to go buy some Outshine popsicles at Costco and just load up the cooler. And then we're going to have our meeting September 8th. We're going to do it at St. John the Apostle Cemetery like we usually do. And we're going to talk our steering tomorrow about what we're going to do. So that's about it. We're also, Dee Dee, did you want to say something else that we're doing?
I always come with Mike's 99-cent soft ice creams for the kids that come to our ice cream social.
And that's about it.
Okay, Dee Dee, do you have anything additional?
She did.
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, next would be,
Really quickly, I'm sorry, Bob, I just want to ask something. Elyville, was there a postcard that was going out for the ice cream social? Because I didn't receive anything.
You should have gotten it by now.
I have not received anything. I'm wondering if it's the same issue that happened with Hillendale, so I will double check that, because if it's the 26th, there's still plenty of time for it to go out.
Is there? I hope so.
Yeah, because Kanema's, I'm so sorry. Kanema's went out for the 20th, and that'll be completely fine. So got the message from Buell's today.
Okay, let me know if you didn't, and
Perfect, just want to make sure.
thank you. And I just sent you the links to our Facebook and our Instagram.
Perfect, got that.
Thank you.
okay, then next would be Hillendale, Sarah.
Okay. Well, we had our big general meeting in July. We had to bump it because it was due on the 4th, and obviously we're not going to do that. So we bumped it to the following week. We kept it on Tuesday. And we did have a little hiccup. There's several $1,000s left over on the budget because we didn't get to spend our postcard money, and that rankles because money is so tight, and we had money and we couldn't. It fell through the cracks. It's nobody's fault. It just happened. It's a thing. But I was hoping to wrangle a little extra consideration when we're all having our handouts for the extra money from the defunct neighborhoods that are inactive, because we got gypped of some money on this last fiscal year. But anyway, that's a story for another day. At our meeting, two really cool things happened. The first was that we had representatives from the Hillendale Pickleball Club, I think is what they call themselves. And if you saw the map that the Park and Rec people put up, and there was the one pickleball court for the big circle, that's in Hillendale Park. And it's due to these people. They got grants. They did it. It wasn't the city. And it's a lovely organization. They're wide open to people coming and playing for $2. You can come between 9 and 12, I think, on any day of the week, and they'll teach you. They've got extra equipment. It's a really cool organization. They're lovely people, and it was fun. And the other great, awesome thing that happened, you might have seen the name Dan Scott in a window here in Zoom land. He's our new chair for Hillendale.
Nice.
So that was huge and very exciting, and he seems like a pretty great guy. So, yeah, so great guts.
Are you going to vote him in as a CIC rep?
We've already got our two. He's going to be our chair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Hillendale has two. Tower Vista has nobody. Yeah. So I don't think we have a spot for that, but yeah, so our steering committee's tomorrow night, and we'll make plans for the next go-around then. That's it.
Okay, next would be McLaughlin, Will?
Can I come back for a second? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Time's up.
Well, when we were talking about the tech stuff, and I mentioned my weird little signs, that's what I want to get some money for, because people saw the weird little signs. What I did was I modified two large, they're pretty much what you put in your yard for a political sign, but they're big. And they had been press letters put on, and I had to block out the bottom that told where, because it wasn't going to be at some little church that it used to be at. And so I did. I know how to tile things big from the computer, so it was all computer printed, so legible, but made of paper, and I didn't count on the park's sprinkler system, so it got a little wet. But point is, people saw them. I put one in each entrance, and that's really, I mean, we've done some great things with our tech, and we've got more people on our email list and all that good stuff. But the signs were what people saw and what brought them in. So
That's great. That's
yes,
wonderful.
right? So this extra money that we didn't get to spend last time, that I'm gonna be holding my hand out for next, is for making some signs that won't get wet in the sprinklers. That's what I'm going for, guys. So now I'm done, Bob. Sorry. Thanks for indulging me.
So, yep, we had a meeting on July 6th. That was our public meeting, and we're meeting at the Baptist Church here in town. And we had the city come in, the Public Works city come in to talk to us about all the laterals that is going on. I guess our sewage, there's issues with our sewage and lines, and anyway, dealing with that. We are working on, we're helping out at the park, so we're not helping out, we're selling snow cones at all the concerts. That's how we raise money. And I think it's a little hard to get volunteers, so we're trying to work and trying to find out, how we get more engagement. We had a off-site, steering committee work group, because there's about 5 or 6 of us that are all, just to try to brainstorm ideas of how to get more people involved again. So we're working on that to try to revamp that. The actual steering committee is also meeting tonight, so that's why Denise is not here. And we are planning another an ice cream social, which I don't think they've done since I've been here, so at least 3 years, for September 11th, 9th, I think, whatever that Saturday is. We also traditionally have cleaned up 7th Ave on that day, so we're going to clean up the street and then have an ice cream social at the library. So, and I think that's where it's at with us, so.
Okay, Park Place, Steve.
So, our last meeting was a steering committee meeting in Juneteenth. And sadly, from that meeting, I got a whole page full of to-dos. So, under discussion there was the Luba case that went now to the Court of Appeals. And they've had the first hearing on that, and we're waiting to find out what follows. There was a discussion of the property that was purchased by the city in Park Place Park. And we're really thankful that the city stepped up to the plate for us. So now we also have a Metro Enhancement Grant for putting trails and signage there. And the work is getting laid out now. And we're going to plan for a neighborhood party for next summer. Decided not to try and do anything this year, and it'll commemorate both of the enhancement grants that we've had, but that'll be next year. And the other was William Gifford put together a Zoom ID for the neighborhoods, and we've been using it, and other neighborhoods have been using it, and he would like to get out of the middle of it.
Yes, you would.
And I'm supposed to bring it to the CIC and to the city to see if there's a way that we can put money toward that directly. Currently, William comes here every year and says, here's how much it was this year, pay me. Okay, it's a pain. So.
William also has lots of information on how we can make Google a central place to keep lots of things for the whole body and for neighbors to come in. And I mean, he's got lots of ideas here, and it would be a nice thing to have, it'd be a helpful thing to have him come and explain all that Google could do for us.
Well, he put that together, and if we have the meeting from back in 2 years ago, he explained all that to the CIC.
Well, we're not using it.
No, we're not.
He needs to come again because nobody took it up, you know? I mean, there's good tools there, is all I'm saying. Maybe Jared could take that over, I don't know.
Would it be possible to have an IT person from the city look over that? Because I think with all the security issues nowadays, I'd really like to have an oversight on that.
Depending on how it works, I mean, I'm assuming William has an email that it's attached to. If we can transfer that email, the ownership of that Zoom account to another email that we can use that's within the city, but then, you know, the billing comes out of the CIC budget. If that's what the CIC wants, I'm pretty sure we can make something like that happen.
So it's currently tied to an email that's ocneighborhoods@gmail.com.
Yeah, I do need to, I'll talk to our IT to see what, you know, security issues are and how that would go about. And I'll talk to management about how that would work, but if that's what the CIC wants to do and they want to have that as come out of their budget as the Zoom account, and it's not much. I think it's like, I think you're looking at like $20 a month if you just do the standard pro account. And that could actually be the Zoom account we use to stream the CIC meetings.
Yeah, the issue that we have is nobody cleans it out right now. So
Yeah.
we can't.
You run out of storage, yeah.
Right.
I would have to see how that would work, and because if we do use it for the public meetings, and now we're falling under the whole public meeting law and so forth, so it'd probably have to come under a city email. But if that's what the CIC wants and they just want to have access to a Zoom account, I'll see how that could work in terms of security and whatnot.
Aren't we required to make our meetings available via?
Yes, but what I'm saying is if we start using that Zoom account
Yeah.
versus the city one that we use now,
I mean, our individual neighborhood meetings, are we required to have those available via Zoom? Is that?
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
that's what I thought. Okay, so if it's a requirement, there should be funding, you know? Just saying.
Yeah.
I got a question. We're required to have a Zoom meeting. Where's that information at? I'd like to get a copy of that.
I don't think we're required to have Zoom meetings, but
It's a neighborhood association.
yeah.
Okay. I thought that's what they just
But,
said.
but any meeting that you have, you're supposed to have the minutes.
Yes, we do that.
Is this on?
So, in the wake of COVID, the state legislature updated some public meeting guidelines, and they did say, they did pass a law requiring all public meetings you have to have the option of giving people a remote option. So as far as that extends into neighborhood associations is something that I'm not entirely sure of, but that is the state law.
I just wanted to add that the conversation you had earlier about the code of conduct as well as bylaws and all of that would be especially extremely helpful for this next staff liaison you have. I was handed a folder with a lot of jumbled documents in it and was told figure it out a little bit. And so that would be extremely helpful for things like this, you know, knowing that you have to have a designated Zoom account, knowing that you have to clean it out, all of these elements that weren't the most readily available to me and were a little bit figure it out, as you mentioned earlier. So as in that conversation, that would be extremely helpful to whoever you have next. So just saying like you want a copy of where it says, you know, we need, if we're required by law to do that. So things like that would be extremely helpful. This is also to Adam. Things like that would be extremely helpful in this position.
One thing I'm going to mention, as I have before, is every technology that we use at the cemetery is at our expense. I pay my own internet bill, I pay my cell phone data, I have to try to connect my computer to a hotspot, but my phone doesn't even get reception at all. And so the biggest thing I have is, hey, you guys are requiring me to do a public meeting, but it's not really possible. And I'm not gonna buy a hotspot separately to try to host a meeting. I do enough. So what really ticks me off is, you know, as Bob was saying, is my budget's low as it is for the amount of people in my neighborhood. And I really have a hard time, unless someone has a Verizon phone to connect to, I can't do public meetings. As much as I'd love to be able to get on the internet, it's a big struggle. And, you know, it may upset some people, and I have limits to what I can do. I mean, we are all bringing our own technology to our meetings, and we're very limited.
I'll just say that's the story of working with the state of Oregon right there, so.
Well, part of the problem's Oregon City, because I've called T-Mobile, I've called, other than Verizon, those towers there do not work in the center of town. If you could be playing Bluetooth music between, you know, my neighborhood and going up through Hillendale, and you're just not gonna get internet at all, or be able to play Bluetooth or do anything. So I don't know if the city can do something to contact these, you know, places and these towers? Because I've tried. I have called T-Mobile. I've said, I can't host public meetings. We need help.
And another thing is that our library does offer hotspots.
I
Again, not
understand.
that it should be on the
It doesn't work.
responsibility
Doesn't
of
work for us. We've tried
the
it.
neighborhoods.
Right, and we've tried it, and then I have to make prior arrangements, and it's really hard to get one because they're all checked out. And, we don't want to have a meeting at the library outside of our neighborhood ideally on a regular basis.
So they are not covered.
Yeah, I just got a text from our city recorder who is,
We're gonna have to get moving along here.
Sorry, but thank you, sorry.
I just want to update real quick. I just got a text from our city recorder, and he said actually that the neighborhood associations are not required under the meeting laws from the state to be open like that. So you're clear.
Thank you.
Emily, oh my gosh. Emily just put the Rivercrest updates in the chat for Zoom because she said she has to put her kids to bed. I can read them out if that is preferred.
I think we can read them.
Okay, just want to make sure Bob can read them.
Okay, let's move on. Emily from Rivercrest.
I can't get to my backyard.
Yeah, Emily just put the Rivercrest update. I'll just read it. It says Rivercrest update, meetings tentatively tabled until we can get steering committee and or other board members.
Oh, okay.
That's it from Rivercrest.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we get down to Commissioner Morrow.
Well, thank you, Chair. And also thank you to Jacob and Jared for getting that figured out. All I knew was the state law and how it applied to us as the city. And first of all, Steve, glad to hear about the continued involvement with the Luba case. The city, in addition to the park property that you mentioned, we've been, this is important for us as well because it's not just a threat to your neighborhood, it's a threat to every neighborhood in Oregon City where we say that we want citizen involvement and then a court of unelected people tells us that the citizen involvement doesn't matter. And so we appreciate the continued involvement on that as well. It was nice to see a lot of you guys at our first ever volunteer appreciation event. I thought it went really well. Thank you to these two and some people at in our parks department who helped put that on. In the past, we've done it at concerts in the park, and it just felt like having a specific standalone event would be a little more special. Something recently that happened that was exciting is that a few of us on the commission went out to Pendleton recently for a day trip to meet with the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation Board of Trustees to talk about our continued partnership as governments, but also specifically about the project we're funding to create a memorial for the Cayuse Five here along the McLaughlin Promenade. And so we were talking about that and just some good relationship building there. We do have a work session tomorrow. We're talking about our rules of procedure as a city commission, just our own governing document about pretty much our bylaws, which need to be updated, and then how we can streamline business licensing here in Oregon City so that when we're doing special events and things like that, that it's not as cumbersome as it needs to be. And then lastly, I just wanted to give a huge shout out to Emma for her work on this committee. As you guys know, this came out of first my push to get the Youth Advisory Commission, and so that obviously had to come with a staffer with it. And I think that she's done a great job, and we're really going to miss her work. And what I do know moving forward is that for me, pushing forward as we fill this position, it will be to move it to a full-time position. That's something that I was trying to get pushed in the last budget, and it's something that I think needs to happen this time around while we're in a time of transition. And that's just another one of the areas where it's not necessarily reflected in the CIC budget what the city is contributing, but it does make a huge difference. And Bob, I will look forward to having that meeting with you. I'm not going to speak for any budgets I wasn't a part of, but all I can say is that for the budgets that I have been a part of, the $8,000 increase has been there. And like I said in the past, even with that, I still agree that it's not enough. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation with you whenever that may be. And that's what I have for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Adam, and I'll look forward to it too. From my end, the reason that I'm not there tonight is I'm still recovering from a artery replacement I had in my left leg on July 3rd. And it's one of those situations where if anything could go wrong, it's gone wrong with me. And so I'm still under the influence and didn't feel capable of driving. We'll have no meeting in September because that's Labor Day. And then I'd like you to start considering who you want to have to be your next chair, because this is my last year. I've reached my term limit. And so at the end of the year, first in January, we'll have to have elections for a chair, vice chair, and secretary. So start thinking about that. And that's all I had. Anybody have any last minute things? Okay, thank you, and this meeting is adjourned.
You feel better, Bob.